Hello, and thank you all for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is Sunday, November 14th. It is 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that means we are going out live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, all the internet media that the internet overlords will allow, because we want to hear your voice. We want you to celebrate your expression of free speech from anywhere in the world, regardless of what your government believes, because it is your inalienable right. And I'm happy to have you here with us. If it's the first time, we thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking about a lot today. We're going to be talking about Kyle Rittenhouse and the trial that is going on and how that will affect your life, whether you're in Wisconsin, New York, Florida, Texas, anywhere in the United States. We're going to be talking about what's going on in Poland and in the Economic Union, European Union, and how that's going to have an impact on the United States as well as the rest of the world. We're not just talking about Europe. This has implications everywhere, and it will affect you. We want to talk about the inflation, the economy here in the United States, and how that's going to affect you everywhere in the world. This is a big deal, because the economy is not limited to just New York State or just the United States or just the European Union. It's going to be affecting everyone, and it already has been. We're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on with critical race theory. It's a big deal. It's having an impact. It's affecting not just this generation, but generations to come. And in all of these things, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear what you have to say about these things. And you can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, DLive. We can hear your chats, and you will also be able to call in at 607-242-1582. Let me say that again. It's 607-242-1582. 1582. The phone is on and live, and we look forward to hearing your comments any way you wish to put them out. So there's a lot on the table. Now, before we get to the Rittenhouse trial, which I think is very important, not just from a Second Amendment standpoint, but just looking at the justice system and the way it's going to affect our lives going forward, on what the government will and will not allow you to do to defend yourself, to defend your family, your property, your cities. It's a big deal. Oh my God, it has so many ramifications, and it is a political trial. This is political. It's not about justice, it's about politics. And we know the prosecutor is well aware of that, as we will show you. But before we get to that, let's talk about a couple of other things. Matter of fact, one thing I do want to mention, if you haven't seen the show before, I've been doing this for about 15 years, political commentary. And from time to time, I do speeches as well, public speaking events at colleges like Rutgers University, Binghamton University. I also speak at other events. And I want you to be aware that I will be speaking tomorrow, November 15th at 7 p.m. at the American Legion Post 80 in Binghamton, New York. That's located on Main Street in Binghamton, New York. And it is open to the public. It starts at 7 p.m. and we expect it to go to about 9 p.m. You will be able to ask questions at the event. And I look forward to hearing any and every question you may have. There's almost no subject that I have not spoken about in the last 20 years. And you are more than welcome to ask any question about any events that are going on, and I'll be happy to take your questions and give you answers. I believe it's going to be a very important discussion about the state of America, the trust in government, and what we can do about that, because you have the power. In the United States, as opposed to Australia, Canada, England, France, Germany, in the United States, because of the Constitution, we have the power to change our government and to change the nature of our nation, unlike any other country. And I think it's very important that we have to also have a trust in our government and control our government when it overreaches and goes far beyond the bounds of what law allows. You may agree or disagree, and that's perfectly fine. Let me go forward. So I did want to mention that, but let's start with the economy. I think that's a good place to speak at. And by the way, this is a conversation with you. That's why we go live. And if you have something that you want to speak about, something that you want to discuss, just let us know. Send us a tweet, send us a chat, text, or call in, and we'll talk about what you think is important. But I want to start off with the economy. Because remember, in 2020, in 2019, we were promised by the Biden-Harris administration that if they were elected, we would see a better economy, that America would flourish, that we would be even better off than we were in 2018 and 2019 under the Trump administration. This is what we were promised. And we talked to you back in February of this year, 2021, February 17th, as I recall, telling you not only was that not true, that you should expect inflation, and that we expected inflation before the end of the year to hit double digits. Well, as it turns out, according to the Wall Street Journal, as of November 10th, 4 days ago, we now see that inflation is at a 31-year high. That we now see, as of October, that inflation has gone up 6.2%. That's huge. That is an enormous increase. And I have to imagine, for many of the viewers of this program, some of you weren't even born when inflation was last this high, that we had seen so much of an increase. And we've seen the Biden administration, who back in February were telling us, well, this would only be temporary. It's only a short-term thing. And now we're being told by the Federal Reserve, no, this is going to be here with us long-term. This isn't short-term. This is your new normal. Remember, you were told in 2020, we have to get ready for the new normal. Well, here it is. The new normal is prices will be higher forever. You're going to pay more for gas, for meat, for basic food items, for your electricity and your gasoline, your heating. It's going to be more expensive for the rest of your lifetime, and even more so for your children down the road. This is what we're being promised. This is what we are being delivered. You're going to pay more. And we've seen it coming for a while. It's because the economic policies that we have seen so far, from the American Jobs Plan, from the American Families Plan that is looking to be implemented, these are all failures. There is no other way to say it. These are failures. And we know that everyone in the country is aware of it because, as we see from Yahoo Finance, U.S. consumer sentiment has dropped to a 10-year low. Everyone is aware the economy is not just in trouble, it is failing, and it is falling apart. And the Biden administration knows it. And the only way that the Biden administration can deal with this is by taking more of your money. Not just in the IRS agents, 80,000 IRS agents that will be looking at every transaction that you do. They will be going into your private bank accounts, into your credit cards. They will be going into every financial item that you have, your retirement, everything. Looking for every dollar that you spend so that they can take more of your money. And on top of that, not separate of it, but on top of it, we're also going to see that Biden's Build Back Better, the Democratic version of MAGA, or Make America Great Again, their ripoff, their revisioning of this idea is going to increase taxes for the average American 30%. That's the middle class. 30%. And we see this 30% of middle-class families, despite the campaign promises of the Biden-Harris administration to not increase taxes on anyone making under $400,000 this year, is not correct. Taking into account all major tax provisions, roughly 20 to 30% of the middle-income households will pay more in taxes in 2022, according to the nonpartisan Tax Policy Center. That's you. You're going to lose 20 to 30% of your income to the Biden administration. That's on top of the Biden administration using the IRS to go into your bank accounts, into your credit cards, into your savings accounts, into your investment accounts, whether it's retirement or otherwise, looking at every dollar you spend, every time you lend money to a friend or to your children because of an emergency. They're going to look at every one of those dollars and say, let's take some more. And on top of that, on top of the fact that they're going to increase your taxes some 20, 30%, they're also looking to increase and have already had an increase in your in inflation. The cost of everything you buy is already going up. It's up 6.2%, and I guarantee you this is not the end of it. You will see double-digit inflation. We are already hearing many economists start talking about something that most of the viewers of this program probably have never heard of before, something called stagflation. It's something that was created under the Carter administration in the 1970s. That's when you see inflation increasing, but prices, your income, your pay from work stays flat. It's devastating. It destroys businesses. It destroys people's livelihoods. Your investments, your savings, your retirement is destroyed because your money is worth less. And the things that you need, the basic items of your life, cost more. And we're seeing this. I mean, it's very simple because we've seen this for a long time. If you're wondering, think back to the Obama administration when we were told that electricity prices would necessarily need to skyrocket. Do you remember that? Because the news media is counting on the fact that you don't remember it. They're counting on the fact that you're not paying attention because it's math, because there's numbers, and you can't understand that. That's what CNBC, that's what MSNBC, ABC, CBS, the major news media, they're counting on the fact that you've been told this is too much for you to understand. No regular citizen could possibly understand the numbers that are being spoken about, the intricate details. I think that's bunk. I think that's a lie. I think everybody understands. You don't have to be an economist to look at your paycheck and see that 20 to 30% of your money is being taken away by the government. At the same time, the government is going into your bank account and saying, I'm going to tax you because you helped out your family, because you gave a gift to your kids. I think everyone can understand that. I don't think that's beyond anyone. And I know everyone who goes to the store and actually buys food knows it costs more money. I don't think Nancy Pelosi knows that. I don't think that Chuck Schumer knows that. I absolutely am sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they don't know that because they don't go to the store. They're not like you and I. They're not going out to the store and paying for their food. They have servants for that. They have the government paying for that. They've had the government paying that for decades. Joe Biden has, for almost my entire lifetime, I'm 53, for almost 5 decades, he hasn't spent money. He spent your money. The government has paid for all of his food and his bills. He doesn't know what the cost of a hamburger is. He doesn't know what the cost of rice or milk are. He doesn't buy anything. You buy it, and he doesn't care because he's getting paid by you. The government is writing it off. Nancy Pelosi doesn't know that she has a wall built up around her property to keep you away from her, but it's okay for the homeless to be living on your property. The Biden administration and all of their appointees in the Justice Department, they think it's okay for someone to break into your house. Literally. We've covered this. We've shown you the appointees, as they have said, and put in paper and writing and said this publicly, that it's okay for someone to break into your home to steal your property, but not theirs. They can't come to Nancy Pelosi's house and do this. They can't come to Chuck Schumer's house and do this. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez lives in a private $15,000 a month apartment in a closed community that you can't get into because you're paying for her rent. because they are completely disconnected from what you do every day. So they don't know how much it costs, and they don't care because they don't pay for it. Now, I know there's some people who are on the more left-leaning, the progressives, the far left. They would say, well, Mike, you just don't understand. Tell me anything that I have said so far that is wrong. Tell me that the Wall Street Journal is incorrect, that inflation hasn't gone up 6.2%. Let's go to the store together and look at the prices of meat and eggs and milk and tell me the price hasn't gone up. Show me how I am wrong. Because yet they can't. What they're going to say is, well, that's just good for everyone. Because we need to spend more money. Because there are illegal immigrants. There are illegal aliens that are trying to come into America and are coming into America that need your money. That's why Joe Biden is looking at up to $1 million. He wants to give away at least $500,000 per illegal immigrant. He denied it at first, and then the ACLU said, no. We are in active discussions with Joe Biden's Justice Department to take your money and to give it to illegal aliens who broke the law. And because they broke the law, we're going to give them your money. That's right. This is what you're going to pay 20% more. Same thing happened in New York State. New York State gave $15,600 per illegal alien, $2 billion of your money, and they gave it to illegal aliens. This is in a state that's $8 billion in debt. New York State, this isn't money that New York State has. This is money that you are paying for. That's where your taxes are going. In California, they're paying criminals $600 a month to not commit crimes. They're buying off criminals. That's called extortion. There's laws against this. And yet, they're taking your money and saying, no, we have to pay the criminals. We have to pay criminals to prevent them from committing crimes and because they are committing crimes. I would love to hear anyone on the left, please explain to me. Anyone who disagrees, please explain to me, why do we have to pay criminals with taxpayer money? Why do we have to pay them to prevent them from breaking the law? Why do we have to pay criminals for entering our country illegally? Why are we paying criminals? Why is this even a discussion? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think, Mike, well, you just don't understand. And you know what? You're right. I don't understand. I don't understand why we would pay a criminal for breaking the law. I don't care if they're crossing our southern border or they're in California or they're in New York State. And I don't think most of the people in America, I don't think the overwhelming majority of Americans believe that either. I do think people in the Democratic Socialists of America who represent, 0.5%, 1% of America, that they think this is right. I think the far left who represent, 3% of America, that they may agree with this. Obviously, we know that Cori Bush, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Anna Presley, the Squad, the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Violent Ithaca chapter, we know they believe in this, but no one else does. And if they want to do this, fantastic. They can take their money and voluntarily donate it to whomever they want because they have that freedom in America. But why do they have to take your money? Why do they have to take my money? Why do they have to take our money and spend it for us? Because they think we're not smart enough to spend the money ourselves? Isn't that insulting? I really want to ask this. Do you feel insulted when the government says they can spend your money better than you can because you're not smart enough? And then they take that money and say, and we're going to give it to people who broke our country, that broke our laws. I think that's highly, highly insulting. Let me ask, as a matter of fact, I'm going to ask the question here. And I'm going to leave it open for everyone because I want to hear what you have to say about it. What? Is my chat not working? Hang on a second. because I'm not hearing any comments, and I'm not sure if that's because of my system or is it because of something else. And hang on a second, folks, because I really want to hear what you have to say. And I want to ask this question of you, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't get it. Looks like the internet is acting up once again. The internet overlords don't like us, and I want to hear your comments, folks, because this isn't the only thing we want to speak about. It's not just about the economy. By the way, this affects everyone in the world. When prices are up in the United States, that means prices are up in the rest of the world. The rest of the world is being hurt by the same economic decisions that we're seeing from the Biden-Harris administration. They're causing problems around the world, and the only person who's benefiting from this is China. China is loving this because they use slave labor. They use child labor, and so they don't care. They can pump out substandard goods all day long and make sure that they flood the market and that they can take your money. It helps them, not you. And that, that's not just insulting, it's damaging, it's dangerous to the world. So I don't know, and I don't think I'm the only one who sees this. I don't think I'm the only one who understands this. I think everyone does. I truly think everyone does. But maybe I'm wrong. And if I am, remember, you can call into the show at 607-242-1582, and we'll be happy to hear what you have to say about this. Hang on, I'm trying to fix one thing on my system here because it seems to not want to provide you the opportunity to comment. We're having the internet slow us down. And I'm trying to fix that for you folks. What? Why is this not working? For some reason, we have the system trying to block us here. So, and I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about all this. Come on. Oh, look at that. And I apologize, folks. For some reason, the system was not showing me any of your comments. I don't know why. So I'm trying to figure out why it's not showing me your comments. But we see that James Lucis mentions that Belt and Rolled initiative is winning. OSHA will crack the whip and enforce morale. So I apologize. I didn't see the comments. It's not coming across on my system. It's being blocked to me. So now I'm seeing some of the comments here. You know, folks, and I do want to address the fact that there's the pandemic mandates. And I have to be careful with the wording because sometimes we have the internet overlords shut us down. They want to, the mandates are one of the problems, but look at the economy. You know, inflation. Do you think inflation is going to be helped by the fact that if you try and, if you create these mandates, which are illegal, that's going to help increase prices or decrease prices? And I don't see anything that the Biden administration that they're offering that's going to actually help the average citizen. There's just nothing that they're doing that's helping anyone. And that's got to scare people. You know, and we've seen that the mandates, as we see coming from the AP News, when they put that in November 7th, demanding that you have no choice. You have no choice. You have to have this pandemic medication. It is mandated by law, except it's illegal. This is patently illegal. And we know that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals for the United States said, you can't do this. This is a one-size-all sledgehammer that doesn't make any attempt to say that, well, I work in this job or I have this kind of lifestyle as an individual. It says everyone's the same. There is no difference. You're all the same kind of general individual. And this is staggeringly overboard. This is an absolute overreach. This is incredible that the Biden administration is looking to destroy our economy on multiple levels. Multiple levels. It's not just that they're trying to say, well, you can't do this. They're saying that if you don't do this, you're going to be punished, and the economy is going down the drain along with you. Again, if you think I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to hear your comments. And I do thank you, James Lucid and Watching Trains Go By, for your comments here as we're trying to bring up all of the comments. And again, I apologize because this is being, our system is being affected here. But this is crazy. This is absolutely insane that we would be denied the ability to live our lives. Hang on a second. I want to try and fix this for me so I can see all of your comments. Trying to fix this as we go. I think that's it. Come on. Well, yes, Mike. I think that the Biden administration, I think that the Democratic Socialists believe that we are peasants, that we have no choice. We must do what we are told. We are being beaten down by the government overreach, and it's insulting. It's absolutely insulting that they are doing this to us because they have no right. They have absolutely no right to do this. And I think we can all see the pain and suffering. I mean, it's not just the fact that we have inflation up. It's not just the fact that we have fewer jobs being filled. It's not just the fact that in September, we saw even more people quitting their jobs and taking money from the government that doesn't exist. We are almost $31 trillion in debt. Where's this money coming from? Who's paying for this? Because I'll tell you what, this is going to continue to be a problem. It's going to continue. It's not going to stop. And they're trying to lobotomize the nation. Yeah, to a certain extent, James. I think you're right. That they're trying to make this worse and worse. That they're trying to stop people from being able to live their lives and to comply. And compliance is a big thing. And we're seeing that in the Rittenhouse case. We're seeing that in several aspects of our government right now, that they're trying to force us to do nothing but just be subservient. It's crazy. And I think it's damaging. I think it's dangerous. I don't think this is a positive for anyone. But I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. Maybe I'm not understanding the economy. Because, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think I've got everything fixed now. But when we look at this, when we look at inflation hitting all-time highs, I mean, 3 decades. We haven't seen these numbers in 3 decades. We're seeing stagflation begin. We're seeing everyone's confidence in our government is falling apart. We're watching the Biden administration do exactly what we were promised would not happen. And I wish that were the only thing that was going wrong right now. If the only thing were the economy, dragging down Europe's economy, dragging down our friends across the pond in England, in France, in Germany. I wish it was it. Anne mentions that more mandates equals more collectivism. And that's the thing. We're moving more towards that socialist ideology. And you're right, that they're telling us more and more, well, you have to do this because it's for your good. It's for your good. You know what else they told us that was for our good? That's supposed to be able to help us? Do you guys remember that back in 2016, under the Obama-Biden administration, in Canada, there was a bill called C-16, where where the Canadian government said you can't use certain words, that you don't have freedom of speech, that you can only speak the way that the government wants you to speak. And Jordan Peterson stood up. It was the first time people were hearing his name. And Jordan Peterson said at the time, where is it? I want to read his quote. Without freedom of speech, we will not talk and we will not think. And then we will have real conflict with all of its horrors instead of the abstracted equivalent. That freedom of speech allows us to identify the problems that affect us. Freedom of speech allows us to formulate solutions to those problems and to reach consensus. And we can see, and we have seen since 2016, actually before then, that the government has been locking down our ability to say things. You can't speak about the pandemic medications lest you be silenced. You can't quote the CDC lest you be silenced. On this channel, we were shut down for reading and quoting Reuters and the AP News. For literally quoting the government. We got shut down for a week, and you have seen this happen over and over again. When New York Post tried to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop, they were shut down. News media were shut down because they didn't like what was being said. We are constantly told from Facebook as they go on to congressional hearings that we need to shut down people's voices they don't like. They have algorithms to isolate you and to throw you away. You want to talk about the economy? How dare you? You can't talk about that. You want to talk about free speech? You can't do that. And what's worse is this isn't just happening to you and me. See, this isn't about us. I'm 53 years old. They don't care about me. They don't want to change my mindset. They're going after our kids. They're teaching our children this is the new normal, that having these inflated prices, I believe it's a 20% increase in the cost of meat. It's a 11% increase in the cost of milk, that everything's going to cost more. They're teaching our kids this is normal and you can't speak about it. Because if you use certain words, you're the one who's in trouble. Not only was Jordan Peterson telling us about this in 2016, which the news media doesn't want you to remember anymore. Let's look back. I can show you in 2019 how this went from Jordan Peterson saying in Canada, hey, it's illegal for the government to say you can't speak, to 2019. Former Binghamton Mayor Matt Ryan, a self-professed and well-known progressive in Binghamton, former mayor, and he was speaking about, remember Nick Sandman, the gentleman who stood as a bunch of leftists attacked him verbally, that they surrounded him. And we had the news media all come out and say that Nick Sandman was a racist for standing still and wearing a hat that said MAGA. And we had individuals like former Mayor Matt Ryan who said some of this.
And Mike says we're the ones that are indoctrinating people. You know, it's happening much more, I think, from the right. We all know that the right media has a lock on mainstream media.
Yeah, but how many high school students are watching Fox News Channel or listening to Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity? The answer is very few. So I won't say none.
Very relevant, because how do all these kids end up wearing MAGA hats? Because if they're not,
maybe just because because maybe for a lot of them they just thought the hats are cool. I'm not so sure that all the high school students who were wearing those hats really have that much of a political position. They might just think it's cool.
And so that's the progressive conversation. That's the progressive point of view. In 2016, they were saying, oh, you can't use certain words. In 2019, they were telling us you can't wear certain clothing. That if you do anything that doesn't match the progressive ideology, well, then something's wrong with you. You're a racist. You are wrong. And what did we see as a result? Well, Nick Sandmann sued all of the major news media, NBC, CBS, ABC, MSNBC. He sued them all, and he won because they defamed him. Because when we saw the actual video, what we saw was that he did nothing wrong, that he just stood there as he was being verbally assaulted, something that the left tells us is a microaggression, that it's tantamount to violence, to say something, to attack someone with your words. That's what the left tells us. But he was wearing a piece of clothing that they didn't like. So that meant he was the problem. He caused them to attack him because they didn't like the clothing he was wearing. Does that sound like the Rittenhouse trial at all? That because someone did something that the far left mob didn't like, well, they were justified in doing anything that they wanted to do after that fact. Except that's not the law. And that's why Nick Sandmann won. But did you notice the progress here? In 2016, under the Obama-Biden administration, we saw that Canada said, taking its cues from America, and said, well, we have to limit speech. We can't let people speak. We have to train them to only speak in a certain way and to only think in a certain way. And then in 2019, that idea came back and festered in the United States. And we said, not only can you not speak the way you want to, you can't wear the clothing that you want to. Tell me, does that sound like programming to you? Because it sounds a lot like programming to me. And when you hear this programming, then you have to wonder, are you surprised that in November of 2021, we find out that Loudoun County, the school board, which is teaching the kids critical race theory, allowed a rape to happen, covered up that rape, allowed a second rape to happen of a minor girl, blamed it on the father of that daughter when he tried to protect his daughter. And now we find out, oh, by the way, they spent $500,000. This is just a regular school board. They spent $500,000 for a consultant to help teach critical race theory to their kids and to the teachers, because teachers aren't there to teach kids how to think. They're there to program kids. Quote, this is the Loudoun County consultant from a company called Equity Collaborative, who is there to teach critical race theory. He says, quote, I think the thing that public education offers, because I certainly don't think we offer learning, are relationships. What historically high schools were for was disseminating of information very quickly. Well, actually, the internet is better than the high school is. Truthfully, the teachers in relation to the dissemination of information is obsolete. But the teacher in relationship to relationship is the thing. So teachers aren't there to teach your kids about math or science. They're not there to teach them how to write and to use English and to think. No. The teachers are there to program kids on what they can say and how they will act. It is a social experiment. And they paid this guy, Jamie Alzaman, $500,000 to teach the teachers, to make sure that the teachers are programming the kids properly. Can you imagine that? And as James mentions, we're only allowed to talk about pronouns and makeup, and this is part of the movement. Are you surprised that Loudoun County allowed a rape to occur to protect pronouns, to protect relationships, the relationship of a teacher and a student to protect the critical race theory that's being taught. They spent $500,000 to make sure that everyone in the school board understood, the teachers and principals understood, what's more important is the progressive ideology than actually protecting students or teaching the kids to think. And you didn't see this on the major news media. They really didn't want to address that. They didn't want to tell you about that. You know what else the news media didn't really want to tell you about? And I want you to see this. 3 teachers have filed a lawsuit against Loudoun County School Board for challenging the policy. And here it is again. All faculty and students must use pronouns. That's it. Let's go back to 2016. You have to use the proper approved pronouns. And now here it is, 2019, you have to use the proper pronouns. And they paid someone $500,000 to make sure that teachers are programming kids because it's not about learning anymore. The progressives don't believe kids need to be taught. They need to be programmed. And you know what? If you're programmed, then you don't mind the fact that the inflation is going through the roof. You don't care that the economy is being destroyed. If you're programmed, you're not even going to consider the fact that taxes are going up and that the Biden administration lied to you. Now, maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. But do you see that? In 2016, we were warned by Jordan Peterson, among many others, including this channel, that said we're going down the wrong path, that we're no longer teaching people how to speak. In fact, we are restricting free speech. We are trying to stop people from being able to talk. And when we do that, it has implications. Part of that is we're not teaching kids in schools to speak. What are we teaching them? I think people have seen me on this channel talk about that program. You've seen the commercials for Grammarly? I think we all have. A program that's telling kids in college, you don't need to learn how to write. You don't need to know English. The program, that computer will write the words for you. It will write the sentences for you. That's something you're supposed to learn in 6th grade. We wouldn't need Grammarly if kids understood basic 6th grade English, our native language. And you have to wonder, if teachers aren't telling kids in 6th grade how to write and understand a basic sentence in their native language, what are they filling that time up with? Well, we know now. We know exactly what they're filling the time with because we have the equity police, the PC police, the progressive police are going out to the schools and they're saying, oh no, program the children to believe in socialism, to believe in progressive ideology, to believe in critical race theory. And if you think I'm wrong, please tell me how I'm wrong. Because I'm showing you the evidence from the major news media, from the accredited international news sources. They're telling me this themselves. And we're seeing that impact when we hear Joe Biden lie to the American people. Joe Biden has done nothing but lie to the American people. You may like Joe Biden. You may think he's a nice guy. Perfectly fine. That's your right. But you cannot deny that he has been lying to the American public. And let me show you, and I want you to understand where I get that. Remember, Joe Biden told America in July we were going to leave Afghanistan and every American would be taken out. In August, he changed that to we're going to get every American who wants to leave out. In September, we were told, no, we left behind 100 Americans in Afghanistan, even though they wanted to leave. We found out on October 27th, Well, that was a lie as well. Not only did we leave Americans who wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but we also left 450 Americans. So Joe Biden's been lying to you from day one. He told you that the economy would be better under him than you had it under Trump. That's a lie. He told you that you would have more freedom. That is a lie. He told you would be safe. That is a lie. He told Americans abroad you would be safer. That is a lie. There's a hypersonic missile being made that has been made by China. Surprise the entire United States military. That shouldn't be happening. China's telling us that they're going to violate all the treaties we have, that they're going to attack Taiwan and take over Taiwan. Biden administration doesn't know what to do with it. We have Iran is busy trying to build a nuclear weapon, and Biden's busy trying to make a deal with them to pay them to not nuke America. We gave Afghanistan billions of dollars, $80 billion in weapons and firearms and guns, at the same time that the Biden administration is saying that you can't have one. Am I wrong in these things? Did you not see this on CNN? Has that not been the experience we've had for 10 months now? Because if I'm wrong, please point it out. Because I can show you every single one of these articles from the BBC, The Guardian, CNN, MSNBC. I can show you the major news media sources, and we have, for the past year, of every single lie from the Biden administration that he has broken, every lie he's made, every promise he has broken. And we have absolutely no reason to believe that either he or Kamala Harris will do better. Headbreakers from Jupiter? What do you mean, hot chicks? I'm not sure what that reference is to. But I want you to understand the combination of these things. And I'm getting to the Rittenhouse trial. I am getting to that. And I do want to hear your thoughts on it. But I want you to understand, these aren't separate issues. They are connected. They are part of the same thing. Because this is a directed effort to silence you and to force you to comply. This is about submission. It is taking away your rights. It is taking away your right to free speech by taking away your ability to speak. You can't say certain words. Kids are being programmed to not speak, to not think, to do nothing but to comply. That's why we see in Loudoun County that they're programming teachers. They spent $500,000 in a local school district to teach kids not to learn, not to think, but to comply. And we see that they're telling them, you can't speak certain words, you can't use certain words, you can't think. And if you want to try and say something, well, use the approved program like Grammarly, and let the computer program think for you, using words for you, because you shouldn't be thinking about words. You shouldn't be thinking of ideas, and you definitely shouldn't think of anything that's prohibited. My God, this is straight out of 1984. It really is. Hot Chicks mentions stumped by the false gods. Well, they try and stomp on us. They try to limit us. But I want you to think about this, because no other news media out there, the major news media, they don't say, do you remember what happened in 2016? Because it's happening in 2021, 5 years later. They don't connect the two. They think you forgot it happened, and they don't want you to think about it, nor do they want you to think about the consequences of everything they are doing. Because the more kids that aren't thinking, the more kids who are restricted in what they can say, the more we embarrass and attack kids for standing still just because they wore something that the major news media didn't like, the more they can control them. And it doesn't matter how they spend the money on the economy. It doesn't matter how they bankrupt this nation, because those kids don't know how to speak up or to use language to say they don't approve. Ed mentions they're being taught what to think, not how to think. There can be no original thought. And I agree with you. It's insane that we are seeing this happen over and over again. And if you think I'm wrong, again, let me show you. Teachers to ask the court to halt Loudoun County Schools' pronouns, their pronoun policy. This is in support of an idea. See, if you can't complain about the pronouns, how do you complain about the kid, the sexual predator who has been convicted in court of rape of a minor because he was using the pronouns as a cover for his sexual predation? He was using the horribly thought out policies to use them to enable him to hunt down young women, minors, and to sexually assault them. This is what they are creating. When you don't think about the consequences of what you're doing, and the only thing you're worried about is saying, how do I get more power? How do I become and make everything more progressive? How do I advance my political agenda regardless of the consequences to the people who are being affected? This is the result that you get. And when we see that parents are actually starting to fight back against this, as we see here in Scottsdale and in North Dakota as well, we're seeing parents saying, no, we do not accept this. We do not stand behind this. We are against this. What do we see happening? Well, then that's when the progressives, the Biden-Harris administration, via their tool, which is Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, that's when they say, let's use the full power of the United States government. We'll use the FBI to investigate parents. They're coming after parents. They're coming after you. And they are doing this well on purpose because, as we see in Scottsdale, what are they doing? The Scottsdale Unified School District has been putting together files. They have been creating dossiers on the parents so that when you speak up and say, this isn't right, you're abusing my children. You're abusing the children by not teaching them to think and to program them to be a progressive or to have a certain ideology, and they're not capable of doing math, and they're not capable of writing a sentence without some program like Grammarly to do that for them. When you make that complaint, the school board is putting together a dossier so that they can hand it to the FBI, so the FBI can investigate you and call you a terrorist. The FBI wants to call you a terrorist under Merrick Garland, and they want to criminally prosecute you, to embarrass you publicly and socially so that you will be silent as they program your kids, and they've been doing it well before 2016. Lynn mentions that I've made a couple of good points, and I thank you, Lynn. Mike Bowie says, I wouldn't take a shower with Joe Biden. Yeah, but he's more than happy to do it with his own daughter at some unknown age, which she, in her own diary, said, well, this was inappropriate. So I can only go by that. A diary that we now know is true. That very same FBI is out there right now tearing apart journalists who never mentioned it, who didn't know if it was real or not. And here goes the federal government going, oh my God, we're going to attack the very same news media that is actually doing its job and saying that the government has overreached its power, and to punish them, they're going to go and use the full power of the federal government to get a document that quite honestly doesn't matter. Can you imagine? The FBI is using its full force, going after a news agency because of a diary. This is the same government that allowed the gymnasts to be sexually abused and they knew about it. This is the same government that released thousands of rioters and arsonists that burned down our cities for half of a year. This is the same government, the Biden-Harris administration, that paid for the bail for thousands of individuals that burned down our cities. I mean, this is stuff that you know, except this isn't stuff you're being reminded about. And they're not telling you, and this is a consequence of what happened before. There are consequences to all of these things, and they are affecting you, and they are affecting the rest of the world. Because we are exporting. The main export of the United States under the Biden-Harris administration and the Obama-Biden administration has been ideology. We are exporting the opportunity for sexual predators to attack women and children around the world. We're calling, and that's critical race theory. That's gender identity politics. That's intersectionality. They have a lot of words for it, but what it ultimately is, socialism and a small elite group controlling everyone, turning you into a serf, turning you into a peasant, someone who has no voice and no control, even though our Constitution in the United States is about freedom and the fact that the public has the power. The 9th and 10th Amendments, which restate over and over again, you are the power of this government. You have all the control. The government is restricted in what it can do. And they are busy programming our kids. Why do you think they don't want kids to know how to read and write? Why do you think they don't want them to be able to critically think about math problems? Why do you think they want math to be racist? So they don't have to teach you how to think, how to problem solve. And you don't know how to write down the problem in the first place. Because if you could, you might read the Constitution, you might understand what the Constitution says, you might read the 9th and 10th Amendments, and you might understand that the government doesn't have any power you don't give it. And I guarantee you that illegal aliens and people in other countries, they do understand this. Think about all of the 2016, 17, 18. Think about Hong Kong. The people of Hong Kong, as they stood, even in 2020, as they were standing out, having protests, singing the American anthem, not the Black American anthem, because there is no such thing. The American anthem, pledging allegiance to America in Hong Kong, because they wanted a glimpse of the freedom that we have, because they understand what the 9th and 10th Amendments mean, and they're able to do math. And for doing that, the Chinese Communist government came into Hong Kong, and 47 of the leaders, the entire leadership of Hong Kong, disappeared. 2 million Uyghurs, people who have a religious belief, disappeared. They're just gone. No one knows where they are. China won't speak about it, and the Biden administration won't say a word. Possibly because they're getting $10 million from China through his son, Hunter Biden. We know this is true because there's a laptop that shows it, that the Biden administration has confirmed is true, and that there is an investigation supposedly going on by the FBI that they won't tell anyone about. Ed Carroll mentions they don't want you to know you have the power, and it gets worse every day. And you're right, Ed. Again, but this goes back. Now, think about this. And I want you to understand. Why is our economy so bad? Because we're training kids not to do math, because math is racist. Why is our country getting so bad? Because we're seeing governments, whether it's state or local or in the federal government, we're seeing progressives come in and they are overreaching power. And they're able to do that because more and more of the generations, the kids behind us, have never been taught how to read and comprehend and to do problem solving. And instead they rely on computer programs to fill in the words for them, and they are taught only to comply. They don't know how to use the English language. They don't know how to do math problems. Because as we see in Loudoun County, it's not about teaching. It's not about kids learning. It's about compliance. So that when they tell you critical race theory doesn't exist in schools, we just want kids to understand that if you're white, you're a racist, and if you're black, you're a victim. And that's the world. And you shouldn't question it. And if you question it, something's wrong with you. You obviously have a problem. You must be a racist because you are complaining and you're saying that, well, this doesn't make sense. Of course it makes sense, because that's the only way the world can be. We know this because we taught your kids that. Over and over again, we taught them that. We showed them the examples. When they did do something wrong, when they stood up for themselves, like Nick Sandman, we attacked them mercilessly and incorrectly. So I'm laying the foundation here for something for you to understand. Why is the economy going belly up? Because they don't expect that the younger and younger the generation is, that they even understand what the economy is. They definitely don't expect those kids to ever look back in time to, say, the 1970s, to look at the Carter administration and to find out what stagflation means. They don't want these kids to realize that they are experiencing an economic situation that hasn't existed for 3 decades, longer than these kids have been alive. Because they're not taught to do that. They're not taught to actually do any research, to think about anything. They're taught to look at things like a TikTok video for about 30 seconds and then to go on to the next thing. That they are taught to have a short attention span and never to consider the consequences of what they are doing. Which is great, because that allows them that whenever someone complains, they go, oh, well, someone is saying something you don't like. That's violent. So you should go out and protest. And a protest is perfectly fine to be violent if you are doing what is approved. And you can burn down your cities and you can kill people. And you will be released from prison as long as you have the approved ideology that you're saying and doing what's already approved. They will release you from jail. They will let you go back about your life. And it doesn't matter that you burn down the city. Oh, by the way, your city's burned down. You have nowhere to live. You have no jobs. You have no income. I guess you're going to have to live under the goodwill of the government. You didn't know that was a consequence? Doesn't matter. I mean, does that make sense, folks? Am I making sense? Does this not make sense that these are the consequences of what we are seeing? Because if you think I'm wrong, just like Ed, Hot Chicks, Mike Bowie, Lynn, everyone's more than happy to tell me, Mike, you just aren't getting it. You have missed something here. And I'm more than happy to hear it. I want to hear that argument. Please, I want to be wrong about this. I want to know that critical race theory is not being taught to kids every day, that kids are being taught math and basic English, that they are able to comprehend words and sentences, and that they're able to read the 9th and 10th Amendments and understand that they control the power of the government. I would like to believe that. I want to believe that kids are able to understand math and why, and what it means when inflation is going up and when the government is going into your bank account and taking your money and where they are spending it. I want to believe that our kids now who are in elementary school, in junior high school, in high school, that they understand the consequences of these actions. But I don't believe they do. And I think for sure that the government is making sure that they can't. That progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Cori Bush, like Anna Presley, like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, that they are absolutely making sure you don't know what's going on. That your kids will never understand the consequences of what is happening, and that they are going to have full and absolute faith in the government, a government that they're not paying attention to, a government that is doing something over here as they pay attention to the distraction of the Kardashians, as they're watching what's happening with football, as they're watching what's being said by LeBron James. LeBron James, who's making how many millions from China, the communist nation? LeBron James, who is being paid by communists to make certain statements. And the kids are going, well, LeBron is fantastic. I'll do whatever he did. I'll listen to LeBron because he plays a game for a living. So he must know what he's doing. I will listen to a singer, an artist, who will get on stage naked, or pretty close to naked, and shake around their body parts, because that must be someone who's intelligent. That's someone who must know about politics. So I will listen to them rather than to think about what's going on. This is what we are teaching our kids. This is what is replacing education in America today. And if you complain about that, if you disagree with that, the FBI is going to be knocking on your door, because that's the threat against you. James mentions, need to make kids believe nuclear is carbon free and Fukushima never happened. Well, you know what? Fukushima, which was the nuclear incident in Japan, that's how many nuclear incidents are there in the world? And you know what kids need to know? Not that Fukushima didn't happen. The fact that it's rare and that there were mistakes made, because 70% of the power for France comes from nuclear power. I believe it's 40% of the power in Germany comes from nuclear power. Nuclear power is around the world. Many countries run off of nuclear power. Nuclear power isn't bad. In fact, it's probably one of the best ways to run the environment. You don't believe me? No problem. Watch the progressive documentary, Planet of the Humans. Co-produced by Michael Moore, who is absolutely a socialist, a progressive. He is anything but. He can't see to the right, even if you put him pointing to the right. He couldn't see it ever. Michael Moore himself co-produced the documentary Planet of the Humans, that tells you an unmitigated absolute truth that all of this green energy, renewable energy, it is a lie. It doesn't work. Michael Schellenberger, who worked in the Obama administration, convinced the Obama administration to spend $150 billion on green energy, has come out, and he has had TED Talks, as we have shown on this program, telling you that nuclear energy is the only way to improve the needs of the energy of the planet without increasing greenhouse gases. That the renewable energy system that's being put in place is a myth, inefficient, and doesn't work. James Lucid mentions, if cavemen used nuclear power, we'd still be dealing with their waste. Well, yes, nuclear power has waste. I didn't say it was perfect. There is no perfect system to get any power, electricity, any power generation. There is no system that doesn't have some downside, that doesn't have some cost. But pound for pound, There is nothing better than nuclear power. Nothing. Nothing is safer. Nothing is cleaner. Nothing. That includes with nuclear waste. How do we resolve nuclear waste? There's a bunch of questions on that. There's a bunch of systems to that. It can be done because it is being done around the world every day. Could there be better systems? Absolutely. But guess what? If you didn't teach the kids to even consider the option that their only answer is, well, the government said we need to have wind power, which doesn't work, or solar power, which doesn't work, so we'll never consider nuclear because our elected leaders didn't ever tell us about nuclear power. It's never been an option. When was the last time you heard an elected official, a progressive, mention the words nuclear power? Really. And I want you to understand, folks, if you're watching this program right now, you are on the elite end or the more isolated group of politically aware Americans. You are in that pinnacle group. And I want to ask you, you're paying more attention than the majority of people who are right now watching football or basketball or watching some music video of a guy bouncing up and down on the lap of Satan. That's what they're paying attention to right now. You're paying attention to this. Let me ask you, when was the last time you heard a politician mention nuclear power in the United States as an option for creating power? Because I guarantee you, you've never heard a Democrat say that in the last 7 years. In the last 7 years, they haven't mentioned it. I think you have to go back to 2013 was the last time that we had a discussion in the United States that mentioned nuclear power as an alternative instead of wind, geothermal, solar. And you have to wonder, what happened in those last 7 years, besides the fact that at least 1 or 2 classes of high school students became adults, and they have no idea what's going on with nuclear power. They have no idea. I guarantee you, ask anybody under the age of 35, how much nuclear power does France use? France, a nation that is big on renewable energy. Ask them, what percentage is coming from nuclear power? Do they even know that France has nuclear power? That Germany has nuclear power? That England, the rest of the world have nuclear power? Do they even know? Because the answer is going to be they don't. They have no idea because no one's talking about it. Because the news media won't tell you that that is the single best way to get it. And more importantly, even if you don't like nuclear power, that solar and wind and geothermal do not work. They are not effective. Nowhere in the world do they work. Nowhere. There is not a single nation in the world that uses only wind or geothermal or ethanol. Nothing. Not one. Because it doesn't work. If it was so effective, there would be at least one nation that's using it. But you know what that is? That's a critical thought. You can tell me, Mike, I disagree. You can say, Mike, but I think you're wrong. Here's some evidence I'm going to research, and I'm going to look for a country that is 100% renewable energy, which doesn't exist. Or you're going to try and find a nation that has a majority of renewable energy as its power source, which doesn't exist. But you'll search for it, and you can make an argument for it. But that means you're thinking. What did we hear? What are we being told right now? Kids aren't being taught to think. You're able to think. You're not in college right now. You're not in high school right now. They're not being taught to think. What's the consequence of those kids growing up not able to think and not able to say, hey, maybe you're wrong? All they can do is comply. Jason mentions lobbyists don't push nuclear. Nuclear will put the lobbyists out of business since most work for the so-called green energy. I want people to understand. It's not that I am for nuclear energy only. I'm not saying that we can't work on renewable energy. I want to be clear about that. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I don't want to say that. I want people to do the research to try and figure it out. And if they can make it work, fantastic. And I don't want lobbyists to be the ones who make that decision. They shouldn't be. That they have a very biased point of view. But at the same time, I want people to think, to understand the consequences of what's happening, to understand and realize that your kids aren't ever going to be able to do this. If we allow critical race theory, intersectionality, the gender identity politics to continue to control our kids, they will never be able to make these decisions. There will be a smaller and smaller group of elites who will make these decisions for them, and they will just go right along with it. They will just do what they are told. And as we have seen in every nation where this very socialist ideology comes in, where a small group of people make all the decisions and everyone else just has to live with it, it has never been to the benefit of the people as a totality. We've seen that in Soviet Union. We've seen that in communist China. We see that in North Korea. We see that in Venezuela. It never works. There is no socialist success story in the history of the world, ever. And I truly, truly say, if any, I dare anyone to find me a success story of socialism, of the fact that the population is not thinking and a small group of elites are doing all the decisions. And I cannot tell you anywhere in the history of the world where that has wound up to be a successful system that has benefited everyone. It doesn't happen. Socialism does not work. But if the kids don't know to think for themselves, they will never question it, which is why we see today that kids are running around with T-shirts that show Che Guevara, who was a homicidal killer, a mass murderer, and pictures of Mao Tse-tung with his little red Chinese communism book, the man who was responsible for tens of millions of people to die. More people died under Mao than died in World War II. That is a fact. More people were killed by the communists in China alone than died in all of World War II. And kids are running around today with T-shirts showing his face, thinking communism is great. Because they don't know any different. Because they're not thinking about it. Because they were never taught to think. They were taught just to follow what they are told. And if you think I'm wrong, please correct me on it. Tell me. Show me the example of socialism working anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. Show me where people are being led by the nose as if they were peons and serfs, where we see communism and socialism actually become effective in helping people. Show me the example where people not being able to consider the consequences of what's happening has been a benefit to those people. Please give me the example, because I don't believe it exists. That's right, James. I wouldn't be surprised. James mentions next they'll be wearing Pol Pot T-shirts. You know what? I don't think most kids know who Pol Pot is. They have no idea who the Khmer Rouge is. They have no idea what the killing fields are. Please, if you don't know what those things are I just referenced, look them up. It should take you 30 seconds on Google or any social media to look up Khmer Rouge, which is Khmer, the Khmer Rouge, or the killing fields, Cambodia, and the massacres of people there. Again, in the name of communism. Communism and socialism, which are interchangeable. But people may not think I'm right. And they say, well, Mike, okay, maybe you'll say, well, Mike, I can see your argument. Maybe you guys can see this. You'll say, well, I can see how not teaching kids how to think, to be unable to understand and comprehend English, to not be able to do math, you can see how that would affect the economy. Okay? And you can see why it would affect inflation, allowing governments to spend money without any consequence on these wild ideas that actually have no benefit to the public anywhere in the future. Sounds good. Sounds like, rainbows and unicorns, and it fails every single time because no one's thought past the actual headline that's going to show up on MSNBC telling you it's all great. But how does that have any impact on other things? Maybe you'll say to me, well, Mike, it's not all going downhill. We still have laws in this country. We still have freedom in this country. And we still have the right to voice our opinions against the country, which I'll again say, no. That's why Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, is using the FBI as a terror tactic against the public and against parents. But we're also losing all other means to be able to make our voices heard. What about Kyle Rittenhouse? And yeah, I do agree with you, James. It is critical genocide theory. And I agree with Mike that we're going to start hearing praise Mao and tear down Thomas Jefferson. You will see that come if we continue down this path. But part of going down this path is also destroying our perceptions of the way laws and our legal system work. I mean, it's not just, bail reform, which says we have to release all of the criminals who made the crimes and put them back out on the street, even though they're going to repeat. And they do. We know it is a fact. It is documented. It is indisputable that bail reform has allowed criminals to go back out onto the street and to immediately recommit crimes. Do they all do it? No. Is there a percentage that are doing it? Yes, and that percentage seems to be 15 to 20%, which is more than nothing. Actually, to me, it's way too high. That these people are coming right back out and they're committing the same crimes, if not more violent crimes, because they're not in jail. Even though they committed violent crimes in many cases. People they've done armed robbery, they've done bank robbery, they've done attempted murder, sent right back out the door, and doing the same crimes over and over again. We've shown this on the show before. Our legal system is being destroyed, and it's being destroyed specifically to allow progressives to do what they do. The riots that took place in 2020 have been excused. Criminals have been expunged. They have been allowed to burn down entire cities. Arson and destruction of property, even murder, have been excused. It was riots because of racism. The intrinsic racism in America, which is just crap. That's a lie. America is not intrinsically racist. That is a lie. But you're not supposed to think about it. You're only supposed to accept it. You're supposed to be upset about it. You're supposed to be mad about it. You're not supposed to actually think about it. America is so intrinsically racist and so absolutely devastating to anyone of color that Ben Carson is a world-renowned brain surgeon and ran for president and was part of the government. Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Barack Obama. Not only did he win, he got reelected because America is intrinsically racist. There's your proof. Yes. Oh, well, there should be more. There could be more. There may be more in the future. But to tell me that, there aren't enough today, What? There's a quota? How many should there be? James mentions Project for a New America got their new Pearl Harbor, and all I got was this Pol Pot t-shirt. That's funny. Dow mentions destroy the definition of crimes and criminals. New definitions made vague so they can be utilized on a case-by-case basis to ensure conviction based on the definition applied at any time. Well, see, that's what we're seeing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so upset about the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Besides the fact that I see this as being a problem because it's destroying our freedoms. On Friday, I did a video on Kyle Rittenhouse and how it's connected to the Ninth Circuit Court, which believes the Ninth Circuit Court said, you do not have a right to defend yourself. You do not have a right to defend your family. You do not have a right to protect your property the second you walk out of your door. That is exactly what the Ninth Circuit Court decided this year. You do not have a right to defend yourself, period. Let alone with a firearm. You do not have that right. The government has the right to protect you if they decide to protect you. Because remember, these progressives are also saying the police are inherently racist and we shouldn't have police. In fact, that's why we have threats right now in New York City, where Eric Adams is fighting with his other progressive friends in BLM about whether or not they should have more police. Even though we see in places like Minneapolis, where the police, yes, George Floyd itself, they got rid of the police and the public demanded that the police be hired back. Because to not have them equals crime. It equals criminals going wild and rampant, and in some cases, exponential increases in violence and death. So let me bring this back to, and again, this is because people aren't expected to think. You're not expected to consider the consequences of actions. You're only meant to comply. How does that affect Kyle Rittenhouse? Besides the fact of the Ninth Circuit Court says you don't have a right to protect yourself. Red flag laws are there to make sure you don't have the means to protect yourself. As I've gone over for 3 years now, actually 4 years now, red flag laws are built in to ensure that you do not have a right to be able to defend yourself in your home, as we have the Ninth Circuit Court and laws being put together to say you don't have a right to protect yourself outside of your home. And if you do wind up in a situation where you try to protect yourself, it is only valid if you fit a criteria, only if you can check all the boxes. And Kyle Rittenhouse does not check the boxes. Is Kyle Rittenhouse a person of color? No. Is Kyle Rittenhouse do we know what his sexual preference is? No, we do not. Do we know what his gender is? Yes, he's straight. Well, that's a problem. He hasn't clicked off the boxes for being a progressive. He is not one of the protected groups of America, the preferred groups of America. The groups that are receiving a bias to promote them, to push them higher and higher in power, taking away without any reason for it. It's arbitrary. It's absolutely arbitrary. Because today it's transgenders. Last week it was being black. Next week it'll be gay. Then they'll make it for those who are fat. Then they'll come up with a new group. Maybe it's because people are short. They will continually create new groups to create new power bases to say, well, they have a right that you don't have. That you're not in the protected special group. And if you're not in that group, you don't have certain rights. And that's what Kyle Rittenhouse is. Not only did he violate the Ninth Circuit Court idea of He's trying to protect himself and others and property outside of his home. Not only is he using a firearm, which they don't think you should have. Remember, we heard Beto O'Rourke. We've heard Kamala Harris. We most recently heard Joe Biden on CNN in a town hall, nationally televised, saying you don't have a right to any firearm that has the capability of firing 20 rounds, period. Anything that's handguns, rifles, shotguns, you don't have a right to any of that. That's what he said. Don't believe me? Check out CNN, Town Hall, Joe Biden. You will find it. It is published. It is documented. It is on videotape. I've shown it on the program before. That is a fact. You don't have these rights unless you're espousing the right ideology. This is what we see in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Kyle doesn't fit any of the check boxes. But Gage Groswitz, he does. He's an activist. He is a progressive. He speaks at progressive rallies. He's there with an illegal firearm. There is no charge against Groswitz for having an illegal firearm. He used it to assault someone. There is no charge on that. And we would hear from the left-leaning media that tell us that Gage Groswitz is a victim. He's a victim. As he was rioting, he came to Kenosha to commit a riot, which is a crime, and pulled out an illegal firearm to chase down a human being and to try to attempt to kill them with a loaded illegal firearm. And that's the definition of victim? My boy mentions that critical race theory is racist, and I agree. I have said it on this program before. I've said it publicly. I will say it again. It is racist. Dow mentions that he went to bed Friday night, a free individual, wake up Monday, a government serf, if the Rittenhouse defense fails. This is the thing about, and let me try and get through. I want to try and make this clear for you guys, why the Rittenhouse trial is so important, because it is not about Kyle Rittenhouse. This is political. This is about the Second Amendment. It's about self-defense. It's about your right to defend everything in America. It's about the Constitution. The Kyle Rittenhouse case is about the Constitution, and I will explain that to you. And you may agree or you may disagree. And I want you to hear this, but no one else really, especially the mainstream media, are actually having this conversation. They are not paying attention to what the Ninth Circuit Court said. They're not looking at the red flag laws. They're not looking at the New York SAFE Act. They aren't looking at how that connects to Kyle Rittenhouse being able to defend himself. More importantly, how you will defend yourself in the future. This is about how you are going to be able to protect your home, your family, your property. This is about you. This isn't about Kyle. This is about you. If Kyle goes to jail, you are going to be in jail. This is about your prison, not his. Besides the media not telling you about the connection of Kyle's case, the Rittenhouse case, the Kenosha shooting case that is now being decided by courts, they're not willing to tell you how that connects to the Second Amendment and your right to self-defense. They don't want to talk about that. They also don't want to talk about the fact that this is, well, essentially that this is all political. This has nothing to do with the law. And I know a lot of people in different countries don't understand this. In the BBC, looking at the United Kingdom, looking at Europe, the European Union, they don't get this. They don't understand what self-defense is, not in the way that the United States does. The world is confused right now on what's going on with Kyle Rittenhouse. And I want you to understand, the rest of the world doesn't know what to think because they don't have this freedom. The rest of the world has no concept of being able to. In England, since the 1300s, I believe it's since 1384, firearms have been illegal. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, guns existed in 1380s. In the 1300s, guns were a thing. They have existed that long. Guns have not been allowed in England since the 1300s, for the most part. There are licenses in hunting and such. So the people of England, of the United Kingdom, don't understand self-defense the way Americans do. You can't get a gun. It's almost impossible to get a gun in Australia. That's before their gun ban. Almost nobody in Australia had firearms, and even fewer people have them now. In New Zealand, forget it. You just don't get a gun. You don't have that right. And there are many, many nations like that. And if you think that's hardcore, if you think that's restrictive, do you think you can have a gun in Cuba? Not legally. Venezuela? Not anymore. They took that right away when they took over. When the communists took over, they took away all the guns. How about in China, North Korea, Iran? You don't get a gun. You don't get a gun. And if you're found with a firearm, you're dead. Essentially, in those countries, you're dead. But in the nice countries, like in the European Union, people don't know what you're doing. They think it's criminal. It's criminal to even own a gun. They are taught from day one for centuries to fear firearms. They are terrified of firearms. And I know my friends watching this, like Agent Black and many others in India and in Germany, from Sweden, who watch this program. I'm not saying that you individually are afraid of firearms. I'm not saying that. But as a country, as a culture, you are taught to fear firearms. You don't get to touch them. You don't get to use them. You don't get to have them. You are taught that they are taboo and forbidden. And in the United States, that's not the case. We live with firearms. 1 out of 2 people in America have a firearm. It is estimated 360 million firearms exist in America today. There have been more firearms than people in America, essentially since the existence of the United States, for well over 200 years, 245 years. So we have a different view. We understand firearms, essentially. Although we have movies that are trying to teach us, and Hollywood, and the progressives who are trying to teach us that somehow, even though we have 245 years of experience, that firearms are somehow deadly and insanely violent, and they will kill you all. There is yet to be there are no AI. Robots don't exist. There is no cyborg Terminator running around America just randomly killing people. It does not exist. It's a movie. Firearms are not intrinsically dangerous. If they were, there wouldn't be 330 million Americans. It just wouldn't happen. So but again, this again requires us to think, to critically think, and to understand context. Guns are not inherently violent. Owning a gun is not inherently illegal. As much as people around the world want to say America is violent, I want you to understand, 99.9994% of Americans, let me say it again, 99.9994% of all Americans follow the law and are not violent with firearms. That is a fact. That is a numerical, empirical fact. Something that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez absolutely does not understand and is absolutely terrified of, as she told us on 60 Minutes. She doesn't understand the concept of an empirical fact. And it is an empirical fact that 99.9994% of Americans are not violent, do not use firearms, not a problem. They're law-abiding citizens. That is a fact. 1 out of 2 people own firearms, 360 million firearms. That is not a problem. But we are told that it must be a problem. We are told we must give this up. We are told that we cannot protect ourselves with these firearms, that is inherently bad. And the rest of the world goes, yeah, it must be, because we've never had a gun. We are not allowed to have guns. We've never been allowed to have guns. So it must be bad. It must be dangerous, because our government's here to protect us. Governments are not there to protect you. Joe Biden doesn't care about protecting you. And the second that someone wants to say, well, Joe Biden and the left are doing this to protect you, I will mention something very simple to you. Tell them, then why are there 450 Americans in Afghanistan right now? Why did Joe Biden lie to the American people, knowing that hundreds, and I will tell you, thousands of Americans are in Afghanistan right now? If they are so bloody compassionate, why did they let 22 cities go up in flames in the United States? Why do they allow and have increased the amount of gun violence and violence overall in our cities in America? And why did they abandon over 400 Americans and lie to the American people's face knowing this? They are not compassionate. That is not compassion. That is evil. They have allowed people to die. And they have lied to your face to make it happen. Whether it's lying about how many Americans are in Afghanistan and they forgot about them and don't want you to remember them, which is why they do not mention it in the major news media. They do not mention Afghanistan ever. They don't mention the Afghan people. They don't mention the Americans in Afghanistan at all. And to seal the deal, to make sure that you're not going to hear about this, we are in negotiations right now. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in the conversation right now to take $6 billion of your money and to give it to the Taliban. But getting back to Kyle Rittenhouse. Why is this political? Why is it about your freedoms? We know the rest of the world doesn't understand what it is to have a firearm like America does. It is not intimate to them. It is a foreign concept. And anyone who watches this show from England, Sweden, around the world, they can, well, maybe not Sweden. That's a country where everybody, pretty much everyone, is a member of the military. Separate of that country, the overwhelming majority of the world, a firearm is a distant concept for the majority of people. They're not around them. It's not part of their culture. But the only thing they know about them is that they're deadly and dangerous and no one has them. In America, we have a different concept. We understand that it is not inherently dangerous, or at least we used to understand. Firearms aren't inherently dangerous. We used to teach our kids in high schools in the 1950s to have a firearm, how to properly use a firearm, how to go hunting with them, how to clean them, how to target and use it as a recreation. And the nation didn't disappear overnight. So when you get the benefit, the left is using the ignorance of the rest of the world, the majority of the rest of the world, and not knowing what firearms are and how intimately safe they are, to give them more ammunition to say, you don't need to have one. And that's when we get things like this.
Okay, so a thief, a domestic abuser, and a convicted child rapist all walk into a BLM riot. They try to murder a 17-year-old and he shoots them in self-defense.
Whoa! That poor child rapist, man!
What? How In what world could you possibly...
Shh, hey, I got this. Okay, so the convicted child rapist who threatened to murder a teenager several times?
What about him?
He's kind of like... Voldemort.
No, this cannot work. Oh, son of a bitch!
Yeah. That's Freedom Tunes. Seems like a joke, right? Kyle Rittenhouse is Harry Potter. Joseph Rosenbaum is, Voldemort. And it's sad that that is an effective message. 400,000 people have seen that. Because it's effective. Because we have now, in teaching the kids not to think, in teaching them critical race theory, the gender identity politics, intersectionality, we have taught kids not to think, but only to comply. That they can only understand these concepts in the most basic and simple forms, usually as conveyed by entertainment. That's it. And Kyle Rittenhouse is an example of that. This is an example that people cannot independently think. All they know is the news media said, well, Kyle murdered people. No, he didn't. In fact, because he didn't just murder people, we have seen the news media retract and they've disappeared all of their statements that said that Rittenhouse was a murderer. I'm going to get to that, Mike. Mike always asked me about what I think the result will be, what the jury verdict will be. And I'm going to mention that in a second. But I want you to understand why so many people, and actually it's not a lot of people, it's a lot of people on Twitter, have said, well, Kyle must be guilty. And I want you to understand, they believe it. And you're sitting to yourself saying, wait a minute, we have a child rapist. Wait a minute, we have criminals, outright convicted criminals, and people who have committed crimes, who are actively the illegal gun of Grosswitz. These are crimes, these are criminal actions. Why do they not see that? Because they're not taught to think about it. They're taught to only see the very clear, did Kyle Rittenhouse hit any of the protected statuses? Again, he's a white male. He's presumably straight. He's he's not transgender. He doesn't fit any of the target groups that says you can do anything you want. You can commit crimes. Remember in Texas, San Antonio, black kid in college, in high school, he was a victim. He had no choice but to go in and shoot 4 people in his high school because he's a victim, because he's check out black. There you go. Stop right there. He's justified. And they tried to tell you that he was justified in shooting innocent individuals. Kyle doesn't fit that criteria. So he has to be a victim. For their worldview to work, he must be a victim. And the rest of the world is saying, well, he shouldn't have had a gun, because the rest of the world doesn't have guns. They don't know what it is to have guns in their lives. So it has to be criminal. Otherwise, why doesn't the rest of the world have guns? Why are the other governments in the world stopping people from being able to have a firearm if it isn't inherently dangerous? Because that's what they've been told. In England, France, Germany, Australia, Canada, they're inherently told guns are dangerous. That's why you can't have them. But in America, we know that's not true. And we know that it's not just people who fit check boxes that are allowed to have firearms. It isn't about your status, your social status. It's an inalienable right of birth. You are born, you're American, you have a right to a firearm, period. So they have to change the story. They have to make it evil. They have to make it dangerous. They have to make it incomprehensible. He doesn't fit the check boxes, and anything that doesn't fit the check boxes must be evil and wrong inherently. Must be. Because if it isn't, it breaks their worldview. Kyle Rittenhouse, according to the left and the progressives, the news media, must be guilty, because if he isn't guilty, everything they stand for fails. Everything falls apart. If Kyle Rittenhouse defended himself, then their view, that means that BLM and the riots were wrong. That the individuals who are committing the riots, who are committing the violence, they are wrong. That the individuals who were racist and attacking Kyle were wrong. That firearms are not inherently dangerous, and they serve a true and real purpose. That the Ninth Circuit Court is wrong, that you do have a right to defend yourself outside of a house, and the government is not the macro, all-encompassing power to protect you at every step you make. That it is not cradle to grave control of the government, but you have self-reliance, self-importance, and self-defense. If Kyle Rittenhouse is not guilty, the government isn't all powerful. This is why they cannot see Kyle Rittenhouse as anything other than abject, absolute evil. That's why the news media is trying to paint him as the devil itself. Because everything they believe in falls apart. If he is found innocent, people must look at the laws, must read the laws, and must understand the laws and what those laws mean. In context, what does the law mean? And if they understand what the law means, they know how it is applied, which means the government isn't the only one telling them what to think. You have to think for yourself. You have to understand it for yourself. And that means that the government doesn't have power over every aspect of your life. The Ninth Circuit Court is wrong if Kyle Rittenhouse is found innocent. You have an inalienable right that cannot be taken away by government, which means that things like the red flag laws that punish you for not committing a crime are invalid. They are against the Constitution. They are unconstitutional, and they are violations of your innate rights. If Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent, that means the government can't do that, because you have a right to defend yourself. And they do not have a right to take your property without a crime and due process in the courts. They cannot do that. It is unconstitutional. And Kyle Rittenhouse is an example of that. He helps prove that point. And the rest of the world's opinion, based on a group of people who have never had firearms in their lives, do not understand firearms, do not have an intimate relationship with firearms, everything that they are saying is meaningless because they have no context. There is no context in England, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the rest of the world. They have no context. They don't know what America knows. So all of their support saying, you're right, guns are inherently evil, is useless if Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent. Do you see the magnitude of this? Do you see the magnitude of how important the Kyle Rittenhouse case is? Because it is critical, because it breaks the worldview of the progressives. It destroys a key point of their ideology. It means that you are smart enough to live your life. You are responsible for living your life. You are not just a checkbox. You are not just a race on a checkbox. You are not just a pre-programmed gender and gender identity and gender preference and color of skin. You are more than just another tool of the government. You are an individual. And individuals have rights. And those rights include self-defense. And if you are taught in elementary school that you have rights and that you are an individual. And you are instead taught that individuals, like those who are white, they must be racist. And if you're black, you must be a victim. Nobody wins in this scenario. Everyone is wrong. Everyone is a failure. And the only one who can keep it all together is government. And we can't let all these groups of people who are not individuals, who have no self-reliance, who can't think for themselves, who can't do things for themselves, they can't be allowed to run around with firearms because firearms are far too dangerous for these unknowing, unthinking things to have. So the government must have it, and the government must be control, and they have all the power, and you are just a serf, a peon. You're nothing. You don't get to choose. This is what the Kyle Rittenhouse case means. And I don't think anyone has ever explained it to you in this way. No one has made it this clear to you. If you think I am wrong, please tell me where in my logic, in what I have just explained, in what I am detailing, tell me how I am wrong. I know no one's told you this before. No one has ever asked you to think about this before. No one has asked you to think about this in the context I am putting in front of you. No one has asked you to think about it this way. I am. I'm asking you to think about this and to understand the context that they are putting before you, because this is about the future. This is about the next generation. This has nothing to do with what's going to happen to me in my lifetime. Because I would fight them from trying to take my firearms. They know that. They want me dead. They want me to die. Hello, Obamacare. They're more than happy to not give me life-saving medication. Remember George Takei? Yes, people who don't get vaccinations shouldn't be given medical treatment. That's George Takei. That's the progressive movement. You disobeyed. You don't get to be you don't get medical treatment. They want you to die off because you're being replaced by a younger model that is a cog in the machine that is unthinking and unwilling to do anything. George Carlin said it wonderfully. A public that is just smart enough to do their jobs, but too dumb to question anything that they're being told to do. That is progressivism. And that is what the Kyle Rittenhouse case is about. Ultimately, it is about that and that alone. Let me go back to some of the comments, see if anyone agrees with me. Dow mentions that outside the United States, populations and South Africa, ironically, are taught that firearms are devastating weapons of war and only belong in the hands of government-regulated militaries and defense forces. I know. And that's just terrifying that they're being taught that, because that's just wrong. Dow mentions, in my observations, anywhere that a country started as a frontier for colonization with minimal home government involvement, firearms were not as regulated. That generally is true, Dow, except look at Australia. Australia was definitely a frontier kind of country, so was New Zealand, and yet they are absolutely restrictive on firearms today, because things have changed. It is insane that we are having to have to deal with this. And if you think I am wrong, that no, this is not political. This isn't about politics. The Kyle Rittenhouse case is not about politics. This is from the Raketa Law coverage, live coverage of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. He's been following this case every day. What you see on the left here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 lawyers. 8 lawyers. All of them watching this case live and discussing for the public what are the terms and terms being used by the lawyers, what are the legal ramifications, the statutes, and what do they mean. And they're speaking on this to the public, live. They have more coverage and more people watching this program than on any other news channel. More than NBC, CBS, PBS, No one has been watching. People are watching it more on this channel to listen to these lawyers tell you what the law is and what is happening in the court trial, and pointing out the failures of both the prosecution and the defense. And they have identified that the prosecution is, at several points, breaking the law. And this is how political this is. This is where you understand the politics of this. Let me show you.
Political leanings.
Bias or agenda or anything like that?
What is the
It goes to the bias of the witness. Your Honor.
He wasn't working for them at the time.
Close to speculation.
Bias in what respect? I assume that people.
Did Binger just admit this is a left versus right issue?
Political trial, and
Binger just admitted it was.
He just said it's a political trial.
Did you see that? The prosecution is trying to say, well, this is all about politics. The defense is using politics. Well, that makes it political. That makes it overtly political. The judges, this isn't the politics aren't on trial here. The politics of any of the witnesses aren't on trial here. Kyle Rittenhouse's politics aren't supposed to be on trial here. Meanwhile, the prosecution is smiling. He's laughing because he got caught introducing politics into a court trial that has nothing to do with politics. It's about facts. It's about the reality of what's going on. And he's introducing politics to this because he knows this isn't about Kyle Rittenhouse. This is about politics. It's a game. And the more politics are introduced here, the less people are looking at the facts and the more they are looking at their political preferences. That's why Twitter goes crazy about this case, because they want it to be about their political ideology and not the law, not the facts at hand. They don't care about the evidence that's been presented. They don't care about the physical evidence that is in hand, the eyewitness testimony. They don't care about that. They care about the politics. And as I have explained, the politics demand that Kyle Rittenhouse must be guilty or else everything they believe falls apart. And the prosecutor knows it too. Prosecutor Binger knows that this is about politics. And that's what he's playing on. Dow mentions that I think Australia was the exception because it was originally a penal colony. Good point. Good point. Maybe they would have had a different view on firearms if they weren't all prisoners. Maybe. But I want you to see something else, folks. Because there's another timestamp in here. And I want you to hear this. 26. Here we go. Go on.
How much does he charge?
What's the relevance of this?
Your Honor, we've had a lot of questions about other
What's the
people.
relevance of this?
Binger face.
I would like to know why he felt the need to retain an attorney to provide video in this case.
Why?
You have a right to it.
Bias. I think it goes to credibility.
Oh
Why?
my God!
Oh my God.
What? Solicitor-client privilege?
He's going to talk about the case.
This was just an example where, again, the prosecution has come out and the prosecution is breaking the Constitution. Not the law, the Constitution. Now, you can tell me if you think actually, you can't dispute this. On Thursday, the prosecution came out and they broke the Fifth Amendment. Kyle Rittenhouse has a Fifth Amendment right. You have a Fifth Amendment right not to speak about a trial, to speak about charges against you. You have the right not to incriminate yourself. You don't have to tell anyone anything about something once you've been arrested. You do not have that compulsion. And the prosecution said, well, he didn't tell the world. He didn't get on Facebook. He didn't get on Twitter and tell us what he did or why he did it. He's not compelled to do that. No one is compelled to do that. Yes, we see people do that all the time. Britney Spears, Kardashians, LeBron James, all the football players. Sure, they do. No one has an obligation to do that. And because he didn't, doesn't mean he should be punished. That is basic law for 50 years in the United States. Basic law. The prosecution knows it. And to even question that, to question that someone didn't tell the world everything about their trial and their case and the crime they've been arrested for because they didn't instantly tell everyone what's going on, that you would assume that means he's guilty, is an absolute violation, which means there is a mistrial. There has been a mistrial here. The Rittenhouse case should be ended right now as a mistrial with prejudice. What that means, in regular everyone words, is that the case ends. Kyle Rittenhouse goes free. And the government will never bring up charges against him again. He will walk out that door and he will be a free man. That's what a mistrial with prejudice. Because the prosecution, the government, broke his constitutional rights. That's above any laws. That is above everything. By birth, he is allowed these absolute rights. No one can deny them. No one can take them away. And the prosecution doesn't even have a right to question them. It is inalienable. And I know people around the world don't understand inalienable rights, rights that are absolute. They do not come from the government. The government doesn't have an option on them. They don't have a question about them. The government can do nothing about them. We are, as I understand, the only nation in the world where you have inalienable rights that the government cannot touch. In fact, they can't even question them. It is a fact of our government. They cannot even question these rights. You cannot deny someone's Fifth Amendment right. You cannot even question someone's Fifth Amendment right. It is a violation of everything. And there is no law that can take that away from you. And when the prosecution did that, they created terms of a mistrial with prejudice. In addition to that, the very next day, as, what was it, eight attorneys are looking on, the judge jumps out and says, oh, the jury, you got to go. Because I have to admonish this attorney, this prosecutor, the state, the government has to be punished because not only did they break Kyle's Fifth Amendment right, now they're questioning a witness, a regular American, and questioning him having a lawyer. And you saw the reaction by all the lawyers from across the country on all different types of law. In fact, this one right here, Viva, he's not even American, he's Canadian. And they all instantly recognize you cannot question someone's right to have a lawyer. I can have a lawyer right now. You can have a lawyer right now. I can have a lawyer for my business. I could have a lawyer on retainer just because. You can spend your money any way you want. You can have an attorney. You can have one for your house, real estate. You can have one for finances, for your home, for your business. You can have them for any and every reason you want. And no one has a right to question that. no matter what reason you have an attorney for. Even if there is no reason for you to have an attorney, you can have an attorney and no one can question that. No one can defame that. They cannot impugn your right to have an attorney. Yes, Dal, it's like the right to remain silent. Yeah, the Fifth Amendment is your right. Let me take a step back. The Fifth Amendment is your right to remain silent. You do not have to speak about charges. The government cannot put you on trial and say, to ask you questions about a crime you did. They cannot. You can choose to do that, which Kyle Rittenhouse did choose. But they can't question any time that you didn't say anything, they can't question that. When Kyle got on to the stand, at that moment, they could ask about everything forward. But they couldn't dare ask about why he stayed silent. That's his own reasoning. You have a right for that. And you have a right to have an attorney at any time, for any reason in your life. And no one can question that. And if someone were to make that, to impugn that, to assume that you have lawyers, well, you must be guilty. Because that's the message. You got a lawyer because you must be guilty. That's flat out wrong. That is a lie. That's like saying that everybody who runs from the cops must be guilty. Could there not be any other reason why you may not, that you might run away from the police? Because I guarantee you, if you ask someone from the left, well, that person ran from the cops, they'll say, that doesn't mean he's guilty. Well, it doesn't mean that you're guilty if you're silent, nor does it mean that you're guilty if you get a lawyer. In fact, everyone who was arrested during the 2020 riots, we were told, if they're silent, well, that doesn't mean they're guilty. They got a lawyer. That doesn't mean they're guilty. There's videos showing them commit the crime. That doesn't mean they're guilty. But yet for Kyle Rittenhouse, he must be guilty. The people who are defending him must be guilty. Why? They got lawyers. Kyle Rittenhouse must be guilty. Why? Because he was silent. Wait a minute. We just went through an entire summer. We watched dozens of cities go up in flames. We watched dozens of people get killed by vicious Antifa mobs. And you're telling me that they were innocent, but Kyle is guilty for doing the exact same thing. Well, you know why? Because politics. That's why. Because Kyle doesn't check off the check boxes that the progressives like, and therefore he must be guilty. Otherwise, their worldview breaks. I mean, does that make sense, folks? Am I explaining this so it makes sense? Do you see what I am saying? I'm not saying that you have to agree with me. I'm not a progressive. I'm not a democratic socialist, especially from Ithaca. I'm not someone who believes you have to believe what I believe. And you can call into 607-242-1582. And you can tell me, Mike, I think you're wrong. I think you misunderstand it. You can tell me that you don't think it's this serious, that you don't see a connection between Kyle Rittenhouse and the Ninth Circuit Court. You don't see a connection between that and progressive politics. You can tell me you don't see it. You can tell me that you don't think the prosecution in the Kyle Rittenhouse case is playing politics so that they can protect the progressive ideology. You can tell me that. In fact, I see Mike Bowie mentions the prosecution wants a mistrial because he knows he's losing and thus won't be blamed for losing. Yes, I believe the prosecution wants a mistrial because he is losing, and he's losing bad enough that the major news media recognize it. We've seen CNN, MSNBC, we've seen the left say, based on the evidence, Kyle is innocent. They have said that. They have said that publicly. And that means the prosecution has failed the progressive agenda. So yes, he would like a mistrial, except he doesn't want a mistrial with prejudice. That's the key words, Mike. A mistrial with prejudice means it is gone forever. It will never be retried. If they only get a mistrial, If it's only a mistrial, then that means that another attorney or even the same attorneys can go back and they can try it again. And they can try and redo everything we've seen. They'll produce new evidence, they'll try and get new testimony from the witnesses. They will try it all over again from the beginning and hope for a better result, which I doubt they would get. But if they get, and that's what he wants, because he can fix all the mistakes he's made. He can try and use different ways of wording things. He will have different witnesses to show up so that they answer different questions, so they don't admit the same things. They will come up with new excuses on why they did the things they did. This is what the prosecution wants right now. Instead, they may get a mistrial with prejudice, which means it all goes away because they have broken the Constitution, not the law, the Constitution. And that's far more important. That is far more vital. And it is yet another reason why Kyle should be found innocent. To answer the question, do I think Kyle is innocent? The answer is yes, I do. He acted in self-defense 3 times against 3 individuals that were obviously and absolutely trying to kill him. And he had every right to shoot them. Is this racist? No. Because I know the news media wants you to think first, it's racism. Kyle shot black people. No one was black. He shot white people. Would it make a difference if he shot black people? Absolutely not. If Joseph Rosenbaum, if Anthony Huber, if Gage Grosskreutz were black, it would be exactly the same thing. If they were women, well, maybe not if they were women. Well, yes, if they were women, they would be the same thing. They were attacking him, in many cases with weapons. They were threatening his life. It doesn't matter the color of skin. It doesn't matter the political preference, which we are told nowadays makes a difference. That, well, if Rittenhouse is obviously on the right, he is. When did he declare his political ideology? He didn't, ever. It doesn't, and let me ask you this. Why did that change anything? His right to remain silent, his right to an attorney, the witness's right to an attorney, the evidence, the Second Amendment, none of that says that only applies if you have the right color, if you're the right gender, if you have the right sexual preference. It's not based on that. It's based on, are you an American? Then you have these rights. Period. You're an American. You have these rights from the moment you are born until the moment you die. Period. Some would even say from the moment you are conceived. You have these intrinsic rights. Period. Done. No one can take them away. It doesn't matter. So if you want to tell me, well, Kyle's on the right, so what? I would say the same thing for those members in BLM and Antifa. Do they have a right to be silent? Yes, they do. And no one should say that because Antifa was silent, that doesn't mean they're guilty. That should not affect them. Now, what they actually did, the fact that they burned down a city, that does have some relevance. That is something they can be tried on, but not because they were silent about it. Do they have a right to have a lawyer? Yes, they do. Always. So we have a gentleman, it seems named Mike. To the person typing in, please don't use profanities. But if you have a question, if you think I'm wrong, please tell me why. To the person who said their name is Mike and you don't like Trump supporters, tell me why. I'm here, I'm listening to you. And you can even call into the show, 607-242-1582. Tell me, you don't like Trump supporters. Tell me, why does that have anything to do with the Kyle Rittenhouse case? Tell me. I'm not angry with you. I'm trying to understand. Because you're putting in a question. You're saying that you think that someone by their political preference has a lack of intelligence. Prove it. Explain it. See, you're making accusations right now. You know what? To this person who's saying their name is Mike, you're making a lot of allegations. You're making a lot of accusations. You're making personal attacks. But what I don't see from the person typing in, tell me, where is this coming from? No, I don't. Hot chicks, I want this person to speak, and I would like to see them explain themselves, because they're saying things that don't make any sense. They're trying to say, well, because political preferences define someone's intelligence. Prove that. How do you prove that? Because someone doesn't like what they like, they're trying to silence people. They're trying to scare people, because that's what this is. It's a scare tactic. I don't like what you're saying, so you should be quiet. I have been, what is it? What's the word they use? This is a microaggression. It's objectionable. No, you didn't say anything. You don't know if I'm a right-winger, whatever that's supposed to mean. That's undefined. You think I'm delusional? Great. Explain to why. See, I'm not the one crying. I'm talking. You're just slinging, you're throwing around accusations. You're trying to intimidate me with your words as if I care, as if I'm afraid of what you think. I don't. I'm not worried about what you think. And I'm not intimidated by your words. You haven't said anything yet. You haven't justified anything. All you're telling me is how you feel. And I don't really care how you feel. You think I'm misinformed? Let me ask you, what have I shown you that is coming from the court, that is coming from CNBC, that's been published by New York Times, Wall Street Journal? You tell me, where am I misinformed? See, you don't have any evidence. All you have is a feeling, and you don't like it. You don't like what I'm saying. Well, I don't care what you like. I don't care about your feelings. I don't. Your feelings are meaningless to me. The law is important. The Constitution's important. Your feelings aren't. And you probably don't like me saying that. Your political preference is unimportant. I don't care how you feel about it. I don't have to like it. I don't agree with it. You haven't said anything. See, folks, and this is why I enjoy having the conversation. See, now, if this person, as you see that they're typing here, if they said anything that actually was intelligent, we'd be having a conversation about it. But you can see for yourself, there's no argument being made. There's no discussion that's being made. There are no points that they are offering. They're telling us about feelings. They're telling you, and they're trying to intimidate me. They're trying to make me scared for saying what I'm saying. I don't care. You know what? President Biden is president. He's in the Oval Office. No one has ever disputed that. If you're happy about it, that's fantastic. I'm not. Do I have to have the same feelings that you have? Are people required to have the same feelings that you have? This person whose name is Mike, an anonymous individual on YouTube, tell me. Because it sounds like he's doing exactly what we've been discussing. He seems to have this belief that you can't have an independent idea, that you cannot take the evidence that has been presented and come to a different conclusion, that anyone who disagrees with him must be intrinsically wrong. That's the progressive ideology, because they are weak, because they cannot defend themselves, folks, because they have no substance to what they are saying. And when you provide them with evidence and you give them an argument, they cannot form one. Because just like we see with children with critical race theory, they've never been taught to think for themselves. They've never been taught to come to a conclusion. All they are taught is to comply, to do what they are told, to follow the orders of their betters. When they're betters, like Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, when they tell them to believe something, then they have no choice but to do it because they can't think for themselves. They've never been taught to think for themselves. They have chosen to give up their rights and their cognitive abilities. And they just go down the line. They check the boxes and say, okay, that's it. So, you know, it's fun. And this is the great thing. Yes, actually, I can show you how critical race theory is being applied in classrooms and in non-college rooms. Yes, actually, there has been much evidence of that. Much evidence of that as documented, in particular in Loudoun County. Have you read the information from Loudoun County? Have you read the text materials? In Binghamton, New York alone, in March, children were being read books at the age of 8 years old, which was applications of critical race theory, saying that whites are better and blacks are less than. No, go to my website, look it up. Just type it in, critical race theory. That's why I have a YouTube. That's your homework. Go and do your homework. Look it up. You have the Library of Alexandria before you. It is called a computer. It is called the internet. Look it up. Look up the actual material. I don't have to show it to you. You're the one questioning me. I have 1,200 videos that I have done. Look at them. Do your homework. Obviously, you haven't checked. See, if you knew whether or not critical race theory is being taught in non-college classrooms, you would be able to cite evidence that says, Mike, that's not correct. Here is evidence showing that this is the curriculum in schools, either in one area or in many areas, that refutes what you are saying. You don't have that because you don't know. You've never checked. You never looked. You don't have to trust my word. I'm not asking you to trust my word. I'm telling you to look it up because you have no evidence. All you have is what someone told you to say. You have what the news media has told you, which is to go out there and say, well, it's not true. It's not real. You're not looking at what I've done. Oh, I'm lying? Fantastic. Prove me wrong. Look it up. Look at the schools that are out there all across the country. Look at the videos that I have done. And the answer is, there is evidence out there that critical race theory applications are being taught in schools. It is a fact. It has happened in Binghamton in March. Did a video about it. You can look it up. Very simple. See, folks, this is, and I'm not upset. I am passionate. I'm not upset. I don't get upset when someone has, they're telling me, and he's fine. It's fine to have an opinion, but there's nothing else beyond it. And I understand. You have an opinion, I have an opinion. Fantastic. You don't have to agree. I don't have to agree with your opinion. It doesn't have to agree with mine. But when he's saying this is not factually true, even though I am showing evidence of it being true, I have shown you in this program alone, I have shown it to be true. And we have gone through this before, as we have shown you, again with Loudoun County, as they showed the consultants and the lack of learning that they are teaching. When we look at Loudoun County, as they're talking about the pronoun policy, as we've gone over with so many cases, not just this one. See, I can show you the evidence. I can show you the Washington Times, as I just did, and the link will be in the description at the end of the show. See, it's not about opinions. I can tell you, and I can show you AG, Attorney General Merrick Garland, as he's speaking in front of Congress and in the Senate, talking about this issue. We've shown you that. It's fine that people don't have an opinion, but I'm not here I don't care what the feelings are. I don't care that this guy, Mike, he has a feeling and he doesn't like what I say. Well, I don't care. It's meaningless to me. He has no evidence. He has nothing to offer. All he has is his opinion. He's got his feeling. He has what he has been told to say. He has nothing new. He's not having a discussion. He's parroting a feeling. And that's kind of sad. And it's really disappointing because there's so much more that could be discussed. In fact, I'll give you a great example of what I mean. There is, you may recall, we were talking about New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Okay, he just got elected to be the next mayor of New York. He is a self-defined, self-proclaimed progressive. He said so on NBC, as we showed you earlier this week. And he believes in a practical progressivism. Practical progressivism. Part of his process is that he recognizes that when New York City lost 600 police officers under Mayor Bill de Blasio, that allowed for crime to skyrocket in New York City. And so he is going to bring back the police. The answer from the progressives, the BLM and Antifa, is, oh, well, if you bring back the police, we will riot and burn down the city and we will commit more crimes. We will be violent, which is amazing. It seems to be the most stupid thing you could possibly say. Well, there's more police, so we will be more crime. When there's no police, there's more crime. And when we add more police to take care of those extra crimes, well, we'll make more crimes. We will create more crimes. And this is what BLM is saying in New York City, as we are showing you, and this is being reported by the Daily Mail. And this was published on November 11th, just so you know. And no one disputes that BLM, the leadership of BLM in New York City, is saying that they want to create riots. They literally want to break the law and destroy property and endanger people's lives because they want something. They have a desire for something. They have an opinion. They have a feeling. And if Eric Adams does not comply with their feelings, well, then they will enact violence. See, this is what the progressives do. They threaten, and they try and intimidate. Do it or else. Believe what I say or else. Feel what I feel or else. They don't have evidence. They don't have justification. They don't even have a discussion. They can't defend themselves. All they can do is tell you, do what we say or else. Because that's all they've been taught. Because they've been getting taught this since elementary school. Going back years. They can only think in a certain way. And anything that doesn't think in that way, well, that must be wrong. Anything that doesn't do what is approved must be wrong. And that's why we have in New York City a conflict between two progressives. You have the BLM Antifa organizations, and then you have Eric Adams. And they're conflicting. Why? Because everyone has to believe what they believe or else. And that's a shame. It's a shame that that's what it's come to in this nation. That individuals are forced to believe these kind of things. It's the reason why we see things like with Joe Biden, the vaccine mandates. We see, oh, well, everyone must comply to what Joe Biden has to say. This is as we were told by the AP News on November 7th. Joe Biden came out and said, well, everyone has to believe what I believe. Everyone has to believe things the way I believe them. That's what Joe Biden has said, that everyone must have a mandate, something that he promised us in December of 2020 would never happen in America, that he would never do this. This is Joe Biden in 2020 who said that. And in November of 2021, he is telling every business in America and every worker in America that they must have a mandate. That's illegal. It is absolutely and without question illegal. And if you think I'm wrong, Federal Appeals Court, the U.S. Appeals Court for the Fifth Circuit, comes out and says it is illegal, fatally flawed, staggeringly overbroad. You cannot do this. It does not take into account it doesn't take the fact that people are individuals. Businesses are separate and different. You cannot put that blanket on the United States. The president and anyone in the Oval Office and our government do not have that power. They do not have that right. It violates our First Amendment, our 9th and 10th Amendment rights. It is just that simple. But that's just what you're being presented. Now, I know some people say, well, Mike, you just don't understand. No, I understand. And I know the evidence that's being presented from the left. This is their own reporting. This is their own evidence. These are our Constitution and our laws. And when we understand them, we understand what they truly mean. And we can see why they are so terrified of these things. Because again, if you show this, just as we have shown with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, just as we have shown with inflation, just as we have shown with immigration, when you show this, it breaks their worldview. And they don't know what to do because they've never been taught to think and to critically think about the situation. They don't know where else to go. They don't have the guidance that they're being told from their overlords on how to proceed forward. And I know people are saying, Mike, but that's not the most appealing way to say that. I'm not trying to appeal to them. I'm not trying to make this sound nice. That's the problem that we have right now. The progressives want everything to sound nice as they take away your rights and freedoms. But I'm not here to try and make it sound nice. I'm here to tell you what's going on. Sometimes the reality isn't pleasant. Deal with it. And we have to deal with it. We have to address it. Because if we don't, then we lose more than we gain. And that's a big deal. I mean, when we think about it, we see here's something that no one thought about. There is no evidence, none from the CDC, that any person who has caught COVID naturally, anyone who has received the pandemic, has ever transmitted the pandemic to anyone else. That is a fact. That's from the CDC. No evidence whatsoever that anyone who has naturally caught the pandemic has never, according to the CDC, has never transmitted it to anyone else. Don't you think that could change healthcare in America? Don't you think that could have an impact on, like what Joe Biden has said, where there's a mandate, where there is a pandemic mandate, but people who have a natural immunity are superior positions than what Joe Biden is offering, what he is suggesting, what he is requiring is actually is inferior to and possibly detrimental to the public. Isn't that worth discussing? Isn't that something we should be thinking about? Let's see. Mike Bowie says, if you take something by force, you need force to keep it. It's the I Ching. And you're right, Mike. It's very true. Dow mentions that he's speaking to the progressive Mike gentleman who's been trying to attack us personally, which, have fun with that. But I want you to understand, folks, these are important issues. And we should have this discussion. Again, I'm not going to tell you that we shouldn't have these discussions, but I think it's important because we're watching how this breaks down and we see the attack, not a conversation, not an exchange of information and ideas, but you've seen live. All I did was get attacked, called names, and there's no benefit because it's about intimidation. The goal there was to make me back down and to make me run away. I'm not. I'm still right here. I'm still showing you evidence. I am still having a conversation with you based on actual evidence and not my feelings. This is important. I want you to think about something, folks, because we were talking about a little bit about what's going on internationally, the impact of this internationally. There are thousands of immigrants and refugees in the Middle East, Africa, Asia. They're trying to get into Poland. Just like in America, they're trying to cross our border. Again, this goes to the mindset and the ideology, the progressive ideology. See, if there are no laws, then you can't have a border because that would define your nation and it would separate people by their laws. But if laws are arbitrary, if they only apply to certain check boxes, well, then you don't need a border. The border is open. It's porous. Anyone comes in. 1.5 million illegal aliens have entered the United States since February under the Biden administration, with Kamala Harris being in charge of the southern border, trying to oversee this inflow, this massive, decades record-breaking inflow of illegal aliens. And we have to wonder, why are we doing this? This is not to the benefit of the American people. When, as we classically saw, 17,000 Haitians decided it was better to live under a bridge in America than anywhere else in the world. When they left Haiti, when they left Brazil, when they walked through South and Central America to come to America to live under a bridge, they were telling us that America was the greatest place to live. It's better than everywhere else. And they said this, and they said, the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration said, and let them in. Because they filled the checkbox. These were people of color, they were foreigners, and we let them in. Not to the benefit of the American people, but just because it's good for the politics. And we're seeing that same thing being exported in the rest of the world, in the European Union. We see the same thing, where Poland is in the same position as the United States, and the rest of the European Union is like Mexico and Canada. Because thousands of illegal aliens are trying to get into Poland. And much like with the United States, these are people from countries in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East. They're coming in, as well as the Caribbean. They're coming into America. They're trying to get into Poland, even though they have no reason to be there. Even though to get to Poland from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, you have to cross Europe. To get to Poland, you have to cross all the other countries. And if you're actually looking for asylum, if you left your home country because of the violence, because of the danger, you have dozens of countries before you get to where we now see them. You have countries that you can claim asylum in. These Middle East, Syria, they're from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq. These refugees, if that's what they are, these illegal aliens, which is what they are right now in Belarusia. And they're trying to get into Poland. They are on the border of Belarus and Poland, and they're trying to get into Poland. If they're trying to claim Belarus is stable, there is no war going on in Belarus. They are safe and stable where they are. Why are they trying to get into Poland? See, this is a question you have to ask. If it's about safety, then they are safe. They walked through Belarus. They had to get there in the first place. There were a dozen countries to get through, to get to Poland, to get to the border of Poland, to be in Belarus. Why did they not claim asylum? Why are they going into Poland? Why is the only place they can find safety in Poland? And I ask you that same argument about America. If you're in Haiti, you are surrounded by countries besides the United States that you can go to. And many people, for 4 years, many of the Haitians were going to Brazil. So why do you have to come from Brazil, leave Brazil, and go to the United States? Haitians have already been in Brazil, in Ecuador, in South America and Central America. They've been there for years under asylum. And now that Joe Biden is in the Oval Office, they decide, well, we have to be in America. Wait a minute, what about Mexico? What about all the other countries, Belize? What about all these countries that are in between Brazil and the United States? How about all the countries that are in between Haiti and the United States? What about these countries? Thousands of miles of land with countries that you could stop in and say they're all theoretically better than Haiti. In fact, Haiti is one of the poorest places on the planet Earth. Definitely one of the poorest, most horrible places in the Caribbean and in the southern, the North Atlantic, southern Atlantic of the equator. South America, North America, one of the worst places to be is Haiti. Just about everywhere else is better than Haiti. So why do they have to be in America? Why is America the only choice for these people? Just like the same question, why is it only Poland is the choice? Because it's about politics. It has nothing to do about the safety of these individuals. It has nothing to do with what they need. It's about politics. It's about influencing the politics of the nation they are ending up in. Poland is a better nation. Fantastic. Belarus is also a better nation than Afghanistan. It's a better nation than Iraq. It is a better nation than Syria. There is no civil war going on in Belarus. You are better off in Belarus than you are in Syria. Why do you need to be in Poland? You're in Haiti. You're better off in Brazil. Why do you need to be in America? And why isn't the news media asking this question and telling you and asking this and saying the same thing to you? Politics. Progressive politics. Because progressive politics says you need to do this so that they can gain more power. That's it. They need to break the system of law that exists for them to gain more power, not for your benefit. It isn't to your benefit to have to go from Haiti through Brazil to the United States. That's not your benefit. You can stop it. You made it to Brazil. Stop. You are a Syrian escaping the war in Syria. You made it to Belarus. Stop. You're safe. You don't need to be in Poland. Everything after that moment is politics. It's just that simple. Mike Bowie says, Chris Jones says, I believe the CDC stated that no records have been kept on people who have recovered from COVID transmitting. Yes, that's correct. And I was just showing you evidence of that. Bowie mentions, I heard some countries are emptying their prisons on our borders. Well, this wouldn't be the first time, Mike. Remember, it was Cuba under Castro back in the 80s. Opened up his prison and sent a bunch of prisoners to Florida. It's not the first time countries have done this. But it is one of the first times that we see the United States in a quandary. See, at the very same time that we see Joe Biden saying we need to accept all these illegal aliens, that even though they've gone from Haiti to Brazil and now they're trying to get into America, ignoring every other country they've ever been through, we have Joe Biden trying to explain to us that what's happening in Poland is different, that it's not the same thing, even though the rest of the world understands it is and that there's a problem here. Because we have Joe Biden, and it's going to come up in a second, New York Post, gotta love them. Biden says, Poland, this is a concern. It's a concern that hundreds, if not thousands, of people from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iraq, that they are trying to get into Poland, and they're in Belarus right now. Biden says, it's of great concern. We've communicated our concern to Russia. We communicated our concern to Belarus. We think it's a problem. It's more than just a problem. It is literally an invasion. But what's Biden going to say? And by the way, I want to show you something else. By the way, there are, of this story, that Bolt talking about Biden and his comment about what's going on in Poland, which is a mirror image of what is happening in the United States, 8. Only 8 sources are willing to talk. 8%. 8% of the sources on the left are even willing to discuss this. They don't even want to tell you that this is happening. The left is virtually silent on this. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to think about this. They don't want you to consider what's happening. Because if you think about that and you say, why are these people from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iraq, why are they trying to get into Poland if they're already safe in Belarus? They don't want you to think about that, because then you have to think about all of the illegal aliens that are trying to enter the United States. Why are we letting them in? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make sense for Poland. It doesn't make sense for the United States. There's no reason why we should do this. Except that the progressives want to do this because it breaks the country. It's exactly the same thing as what we're seeing with the Rittenhouse case. They are breaking our laws. They are breaking our Constitution. They're breaking, and when I say they're breaking the law, in this case, well, not like the Rittenhouse case, but they're picking and choosing which laws to enforce. There are laws about immigrating into the United States. These are illegal immigrants. They have broken the law. We know this. And if we do nothing, if we do what the Biden-Harris administration are doing, which is turning a blind eye, shipping the kids in the middle of the night into different states like New York, like Tennessee, as we have shown you, both on May 23rd, back in October as well, well, then you're selectively picking and choosing which laws to enforce. If you're like California and you're violating immigration laws and allowing illegal immigrants into your country and allowing them to vote, if you're like New York State where you're allowing illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses so that they can go to and from jobs that is illegal for them to hold, then you're picking and choosing laws and you're breaking the country. You are consciously breaking the nation, because no nation can exist if you pick and choose which laws apply on which day, depending on your politics and your political preferences. That is just a fact. It's just an obvious thought. By the way, I want people to know, I didn't stop the progressive who was making the personal attacks on me. I don't want you to think that, I silenced it, or didn't silence anyone's voice. Did not stop them from speaking. They just went away because they had no argument. They had nothing to say. They had nothing to offer. And they have nothing to say about immigration. They have nothing to say about the fact that what's happening to Poland is exactly what's happening in the United States. The difference being the Polish people have decided that they will not bend to the will of progressives, that they believe in their nation and they believe in the laws that they have, as opposed to the Biden administration, who are doing anything that the progressives want and are breaking our laws actively. Just like they're asking us to break the law in the Rittenhouse trial, which should be a mistrial with prejudice. The Fifth Amendment was broken. The absolute sanctity of Americans being able to have legal representation for whatever reason they want has been broken. These are absolute laws of concrete bedrock of our nation have been violated over and over again. The Rittenhouse case should not continue. Yes, he's innocent, and yes, that should be the end of the case. Same thing about illegal immigration. You don't get to pick and choose the laws you want and apply them based on someone's political preference or how they fill out a checkbox. I don't know. If you think I'm wrong, tell me. If you think I've misunderstood, tell me. And you can definitely call in to 607-242-1582 to explain how I've gotten it wrong. But I can tell you this, the rest of the world is noticing. They're noticing because we see that in China. China is now trying to take over Taiwan. Why? Because the United States is weak. Because the United States is, broken. Because the Biden-Harris administration have no balls. Because they will not stand up for people, not even American citizens. We won't stand up for American citizens in Afghanistan. Why are we going to stand up for the people of Taiwan? Why are we going to stand against China? Which the Biden-Harris administration, the progressives, the Democratic Socialists of America, they want us to be more like China. BLM in New York, Black Lives Matter of New York, they want us to be like China. The Democratic Socialists of America with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Cori Bush, they want us to be like China. The communists there, they want socialism. They want to be like China, a nation that is willing to make millions of people disappear based solely on their religious beliefs and willing to enslave people like Taiwan just because they want to. This is what are the consequences of the progressive movement in America. These are the laws that they are looking to break and violate. These are your rights they are willing to strip forever to gain power because that's what they want. And they're willing to do almost anything they can to you for it. We see in the Washington, D.C., people who were arrested for January 6th, for breaking the law on January 6th, for entering the Congress against the law. For those individuals who have been in jail since, many of them, since February, for 9 months. We have individuals who have been sitting in a jail for 9 months. This is unheard of. And they have been abused in those jails for 9 months. And this is the fault of DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. She's at fault here. The news media doesn't want to talk about the story. They do not want to let you know about this. They have minimized this story as much as they possibly can. That people in the DC jail, the people who have been arrested for January 6th have been massively abused. And according to Politico, the statement is allegations of filthy conditions and inhumane treatment. That rampant abuses by guards, retaliation against prisoners, substandard food, and unsanitary plumbing. This is what they are doing to the people who did something that they didn't like. The progressives did not like what they did. Did they commit arson like we saw in Minneapolis, in Seattle, in Portland, Brooklyn, New York, Austin, Texas, Boulder, Colorado? Did they commit those arsons? No. Did they kill anyone like we saw in Seattle, in Portland, like we saw in Indianapolis, in Texas? Did they kill people? No. In fact, they were killed. The protesters were killed. Not anyone else. And there was only one. One protester was killed by the government for no reason. For no reason. These people are being abused in Washington, D.C., being held and restricted and punished because they didn't agree with the political ideology of the progressives, because they voiced their opinion about Joe Biden. And that is unacceptable. It's so bad that according to the Gateway Pundit, as of yesterday, that they were being attacked with chemical weapons, presumably tear gas. Tear gas! To such a degree that at least 3 of the prisoners had to be removed on stretchers from their cells because they could not breathe. Because the guards walked away, filled the room with tear gas, and kept pumping it in without ever checking on the prisoners for at least 15 minutes, according to the story. This is what happens when you allow progressives, these socialists, to take control. And when someone disagrees with them, it is exactly the same thing that we see happening in China. This is why Taiwan doesn't want to be part of China. They don't want to be part of the communists. This is why Hong Kong doesn't want to be part of China. They don't want to be part of the communists. They don't want to be socialists. Because they know these are the tactics that socialists use. Suddenly, 2 million Uyghurs disappear because of their religious beliefs. This is why we see so many people in Hong Kong disappear, because they sang the American anthem and held up an American flag because they want freedom. This is why we see that people who were protesting on January 6th are sitting in jail cells for 9 months and are being attacked with chemical weapons because the progressives don't like them. This is the future of America. A bankrupt nation that is losing money hand over fist like the banana republics of the 1980s, with inflation from the 1970s, where you cannot speak up, where you are punished for saying things just like in the book 1984, and that are where we are seeing people punished as if they were in communist China or down in Cuba or in Venezuela. And this is what is being taught to your kids right now. Comply or else. Do what the government says or else. I tell you, folks, it terrifies me. And again, I'm not telling you you have to believe what I believe. I'm not a progressive. You are not required to believe what I believe just because I'm black or just because I'm Hispanic. You're not required to believe what I believe. But I am asking you, look at the evidence I am presenting to you from predominantly left-leaning sources and evaluate the argument I have made. And then tell me, does it make sense? Is there an argument that's coming from the progressives that counters what I've just said? Because the answer is there really isn't. I know they have feelings that are different, but do they actually have an argument? Can they show you the law? Can they show you the benefits? Because they can't. Wow. We've been on for 3 hours. And folks, I really do appreciate every word. Every word that you've been able to share with us, every single message that I've received. I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for that, because it's wonderful. You're the reason why I do this week after week. You're the reason why we will be here next Sunday at 2:30 p.m. If you've made it this far in the video, please like, share, subscribe. Allow us to have the opportunity to share these thoughts with others and to have a conversation with them. Even for those who are on the left, we invite you every week. Please share your thoughts with us. Have a conversation with us. Not name calling, not insulting us, but have a conversation with us. Give us your evidence. Tell us what you believe. Tell us what you think. Even in the comments below, tell us what you think. Give us your evidence. Let's have a conversation. Not name calling, not insulting people, but actually a conversation. Because that's what America really is. That's what the First Amendment is. That's what freedom is. That's what thought is. Because if we think about these things, we can come up with better answers. We can work things out. But if we're just having people yell at you, trying to intimidate you, insulting you, because they have nothing else that they can say, because they have no other answer, well, that doesn't really help. And it doesn't move anyone forward. And that's why we shouldn't have critical race theory in our schools. That's why our kids should be able to think and to understand. Because just blankly following the leader, and that leader happens to be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that doesn't get you a train to Hawaii, and it doesn't make the world better. But that's what I think. And I look forward to being able to speak with you more. And next Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from anywhere in the world, you are invited to call in at 607-242-1582. You are invited to make your comments. I'm sure we'll be talking about the results of the Kyle Rittenhouse case, which I hope is a mistrial with prejudice, and if not, innocent on all charges. I hope that's what we're going to be speaking about. But it'll be whatever you would like to speak about. And until that time, I want to thank you. I appreciate you. And I want you to be well. Thank you.